You are not who you think you are, and the world is not what you think it is. Every memory you carry, every certainty you clutch, every fact you believe was built on shifting ground. Tonight, you will lie still, and piece by piece, everything you thought was solid will dissolve into something you can neither escape nor understand. You believe you are lying on something firm, a surface that holds your body in place, that reassures you with the illusion of solidity. But the ground, the floor, even the very bed beneath you is almost entirely empty. The atoms that compose it are over 99.9999999% empty space. The electrons orbiting their nuclei never actually touch one another. What you feel as contact is nothing more than the repulsion of electromagnetic fields, a denial of intrusion masquerading as substance. You are not resting on matter. You are suspended in a lattice of forces, hovering on fields like a ghost convincing itself of weight. The solidity of your world is the first great lie. Quantum tunneling tells us that particles do not respect barriers. They sometimes pass through walls, leaking across boundaries as though the wall wasn't even there. That same principle governs the electronics in your devices, the stars in the sky, the very fusion that fuels your sun. If particles can slip through the boundaries you call impenetrable, then what does it mean to say you are contained within a body, within a room, within a world? How certain can you be that your walls, your doors, your limits are anything but temporary illusions? And yet you cling to them. You trust the floor to hold you, the chair to support you, the world to behave. But it is all deception. The physicist Richard Feynman once remarked that nobody truly understands quantum mechanics. We use it, we rely on it, but we do not comprehend it. The foundations of your reality are reliable only because they have failed to fail so far. What kind of comfort is that? Consider history. The people who once believed the earth was flat trusted in the apparent solidity of their perception. To them, the ground was firm and the horizon was truth. Then Copernicus tore away their foundation. The earth was not the center, but a drifting speck. Galileo's telescope confirmed it. What appeared to be fixed was moving. What seemed central was peripheral. Your ancestors believed themselves on stable ground until the ground was revealed as motion itself. Descartes, centuries later, sat by a fire and realized he could not even trust the evidence of his senses. The crackle of flame, the warmth on his skin, the glow of the light, all could be dreams. His radical doubt hollowed out the solidity of perception. He concluded that the only certainty was the act of thinking itself. But even that conclusion has been shaken. Neuroscience shows you are not the author of your thoughts. They arrive unbidden, constructed by subconscious processes before your awareness latches on. If you do not control your thoughts, then what exactly is left to claim as solid? Now return to the ground beneath you. You call it solid, yet it is a buzzing emptiness. You call it stable, yet it drifts on a planet hurtling at 67,000 miles per hour around the sun, which itself orbits the galactic center at 514,000 miles per hour. You call it safe, yet the Earth's magnetic shield flickers, poles shift, asteroids sweep silently through the void. The ground you think is still is a thin film of fragile life clinging to a violent spinning rock, drifting in silence through nothingness. Stability is not real. Solidity is not real. Contact is not real. Think of Zeno's paradox. To walk across a room, you must first go halfway, then half of the remaining half, then half of that, again and again, infinitely. Logically, you should never arrive. Each step is an illusion of progress across an infinite division, and yet you walk. Motion itself is a paradox. Your body claims solidity, your feet claim contact, and your journey claims completion. But underneath all of it, the paradox remains. Unresolved. Now let this sink into your chest. If solidity, stability, and contact are illusions, what else are you mistaking for real? If the foundations of physics, history, philosophy, and perception all betray you, then what part of your experience deserves trust? If the ground itself is not solid, what is holding you up? What happens if nothing is? You measure your life by clocks, calendars, the relentless ticking of seconds that stack into hours, days, years. You imagine time as an arrow pointing forward, always forward. But physics does not honor your imagination. The equations that govern the universe are time-symmetric. They do not distinguish between past and future. If you reverse them, they still work. The only difference you perceive, what you call the flow of time, is an artifact of entropy, the spreading of disorder. You mistake disorder for progress. You mistake decay for direction. The arrow of time is written not in clocks, but in the breaking of symmetry. A glass shatters, never reassembles. A body ages, never reverses. But nothing in the laws of physics forbids the reverse. The reversal is simply improbable, staggeringly so. Yet improbable is not the same as impossible. Every second of your life is built on the assumption that the improbable will not happen. That assumption is faith, not knowledge. Think of memory. You do not remember the future, only the past. But why? Your brain constructs a story out of entropies. Trail, the broken pieces of glass, the wrinkles of skin, the burnt ashes. These are records of increasing disorder. Memory is the residue of entropy. You do not recall tomorrow because it has not yet scattered into disorder. Your identity itself is built on this asymmetry. You are a collection of past events, pretending to be a continuous self. But if time itself is indifferent, what separates your future self from your past self, except the illusion of sequence? Einstein dismantled the arrow entirely. In his relativity, all of time, past, present, future, already exists. The block universe, he called it. Every moment is eternally fixed in space-time, like pages in a book that already exists from cover to cover. You are not moving through time. You are trapped in it, frozen in your coordinates, deceived by your limited perception into thinking you are flowing. You are not a traveler. You are a prisoner, and the implications stretch further. Quantum physics introduces superposition, where particles exist in multiple states until observed. What you call the present may not be a definitive slice, but a collapsing haze of possibilities. The now is not a stable point, it is a negotiation between competing outcomes. You are not living in a solid present. You are balancing on a knife edge of uncertainty, collapsing wave functions with every breath. But what if memory itself is unreliable? Psychological studies, like those of Elizabeth Loftus, show how easily false memories are implanted. Entire childhoods can be rewritten. If your past can be fabricated and your future is unfixed, then what exactly is the timeline of your life? You are a creature caught between two illusions, a past that is not secure and a future that is not guaranteed. History offers no comfort either. Civilizations rise and fall, believing in the permanence of their calendars, their linear progress. But progress is a story humans tell themselves to bear the weight of entropy. The Roman Empire believed it would endure. The Mayans believed their cycles eternal. The Soviet Union believed in inevitable victory. Each collapsed, proving that progress is nothing but temporary structure on a dissolving timeline. If entire civilizations misinterpret time, what makes you think you understand it? Think of the grandfather paradox. If you traveled back in time and killed your ancestor, you erase yourself, and thus you could not have traveled back. The paradox is not a joke. It is a reflection of your incomplete grasp of causality. Time is not a line but a tangled knot, or cause and effect. Blur. And if cause and effect blur, then how do you know your thoughts are causing your actions, instead of your actions dictating your thoughts retroactively? You want to believe in a future you can plan, a past you can remember, a present you can occupy. But physics, psychology, and history agree. None of those are what they seem. You do not move through time. Time devours you. So ask yourself this: if the past is unreliable, the present unstable, and the future already written, then where exactly are you? You cling to memory as the only proof that you have lived. Without it, you would dissolve into nothing. No childhood, no identity, no story. But memory is not a recording. It is not a film you replay in your mind. It is reconstruction, fragile and flawed, rebuilt anew every time you recall it. What you call remembering is, in fact, rewriting. Each act of recall corrupts the memory further, bending it to your present state of mind, your present beliefs, your present emotions. The more you remember, the less true the memory becomes. Psychologists have demonstrated this repeatedly. Elizabeth Loftus implanted false memories into subjects, convincing them they had once been lost in a mall as children, an event that never happened. With gentle suggestion, people created detailed recollections: the layout of the mall, the face of the stranger who helped them, the clothes they wore. Pure invention, born of the mind's hunger for coherence. Your brain does not care about truth. It cares about continuity. And continuity is a lie you tell yourself. Even so-called flashbulb memories, those searing, supposedly indelible recollections of trauma or public events, are unstable. People sworn to the accuracy of their memories of September 11th, or the Challenger explosion, or the assassination of Kennedy, diverge drastically when pressed years later. Details shift, fade, transform. What you are certain happened one way can be proven to have happened another. Certainty is not evidence. Conviction is not proof. Neuroscience offers an even darker revelation. Memory is malleable because it is not stored in a single place. It is distributed across networks of neurons, woven into synaptic patterns that degrade and shift over time. Proteins decay, connections weaken, and in their place, new links are forged. Every time you retrieve a memory, you risk overwriting it. Your life story is a palimpsest scraped, rewritten, scraped again until nothing of the original remains. And consider this: if memories can be fabricated, altered, or erased, then how do you know the childhood you remember was yours? How do you know the people you picture are not composites, inventions, fictions stitched together by a brain desperate to anchor itself? You assume continuity because you wake up each morning in the same body. But your body is not the same. Cells die and are replaced. Skin sloughs away. Even the neurons in your brain rewire. You are not the child you remember. You are an entirely different configuration, haunted by echoes that may not belong to you. History itself mirrors this fragility. Nations construct collective memory, myths of founding fathers, battles, revolutions. But those histories are rewritten with every regime change. Entire cultures vanish into revision. Consider the Library of Alexandria, its contents lost forever. Or Orwell's warning in 1984. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. If collective memory is rewritten, then the past is not fixed. It is narrative, and narrative is manipulation. Now look inward. What if your most intimate memories, your first kiss, your greatest shame, your deepest wound, are just as unreliable as the myths of nations? What if you are not remembering but inventing, not recalling but composing? What does it mean for you to exist if the foundation of your identity is fabrication? Philosophy has long suspected this fragility. Hume questioned the self, arguing, that what we call I is nothing more than a bundle of perceptions, stitched together by habit. If memory fails, the bundle unravels. Nietzsche declared that the burden of memory cripples humanity, that forgetting is essential to survival. But what if you have already forgotten, and what you carry now are memories but convenient lies? Experiments with split-brain patients reveal something more horrifying still. When the hemispheres of the brain are severed, each half invents explanations for actions it cannot understand. A left hand performs an action directed by the right hemisphere, and the left hemisphere invents a reason for it confident, detailed, utterly false. Your own brain deceives itself constantly, and you do not notice that, so ask yourself, if your memories are not photographs, but inventions, if your continuity is a desperate illusion, if your self is only a story written on dissolving paper, then who exactly do you think you are? You have been taught to think of yourself as a stable entity, a center of consciousness, a fixed I behind the eyes, pulling the strings. But neuroscience, philosophy, and psychology dismantle this fantasy with surgical precision. The self you believe in, the one who owns your memories, your body, your choices, is an afterthought, an illusion stitched together by processes that run deeper than your awareness. Consider Benjamin Libet's experiments in the 1980s. Electrodes placed on the scalp measured brain activity before participants made simple choices like flexing a finger. The startling result: the brain initiated the action nearly half a second before the participant became consciously aware of deciding. The conscious self did not cause the act, it observed it. You are not the author of your choices. You are the witness who arrives late and claims credit. The implications ripple outward. If your brain makes decisions before you are aware of them, then free will collapses. Every time you say, I chose, you are lying to yourself. The choice was made beneath awareness, determined by neurochemistry, genetics, experience. What you call freedom is post hoc storytelling. The self is not in control. It is a puppet narrating its own strings. Eastern philosophies anticipated this long before neuroscience. Buddhism has no soul, no self, only aggregates of sensation, perception, thought, and consciousness. The doctrine of anatano self declares that clinging to the illusion of I is the root of suffering. Western philosophy caught up much later. David Hume described the self as nothing but a bundle of perceptions, like beads on a string with no thread. Remove the perceptions, and the self evaporates dot, and yet you feel it so strongly, an eye behind your eyes, watching, deciding. But what if this watcher is just another construction? The default mode network in your brain, the circuitry that activates when you are daydreaming, imagining, recalling, is what generates the narrative of self. Shut it down with psychedelics, with meditation, with trauma, and the I disappears. Ego dissolution is not mystical, it is neurological. The self is a program that can be switched off. History reminds you how dangerous this illusion can be. René Descartes built his philosophy on, I think, therefore I am. But he never asked, who is doing the thinking? Neuroscience now answers, no one. Thoughts arise, unbidden. They flash and vanish. The I is merely the echo that claims ownership afterward. Descartes mistook the echo for the source. You are making the same mistake. Psychology deepens the wound. Consider split brain studies. When the hemispheres are severed, each side operates independently. One hemisphere raises a hand. The other invents a reason for it. The self, in this case, is divided. Which half is the real you? Both. Neither? The unity of self disintegrates under the scalpel. And if identity is not unified, then what of morality? The very notion of responsibility assumes a stable self making free choices. But if the self is an illusion, then who is guilty? Who is responsible? Criminals, saints, politicians, murderers, all are shadows, narratives woven after the fact. Punishment and praise are built on a ghost. Think, too, of Alzheimer's disease, erasing memories until the self collapses. Families say their loved one isn't there anymore, even though the body still lives. If the self can be unraveled by protein tangles, was it ever real? Or was it only ever a fragile thread woven from biology and story, always waiting to fray? Here is the bleakest truth. There is no homunculus in your head, no central self-steering. The ship, there is only a chorus of processes, each whispering, competing, sometimes harmonizing, sometimes clashing. Out of their noise emerges a phantom called you. But the phantom cannot be found. You are not the thinker of your thoughts, nor the doer of your deeds. You are the story told afterward. So ask yourself, if the I you trust is nothing but a hallucination, then who is reading these words right now? You move through life convinced that every choice is yours, to speak, to eat, to love, to leave. You tell yourself, I decided. But this belief is a story written after the fact, a fragile illusion meant to keep you from seeing the machinery underneath. What you call will is a shadow cast by processes already decided. You do not choose. You discover what has already been chosen. Neuroscience is exposed to fraud. Libet's experiments were only the beginning. Later studies using fMRI showed that brain activity predicting a choice can be detected up to 7 seconds before you become aware of deciding. 7 seconds. Long enough to prove that the self lags behind the act. You are not the commander, you are the audience. And the play has already been written. Psychology echoes this. Daniel Wegner's research on the illusion of conscious will revealed how easily humans can be tricked into believing they chose an action they did not. Subjects were guided to move a cursor, and even when their movement was manipulated externally, they swore it was their own decision. The feeling of will is just that, a feeling, not a fact. But if free will collapses, so too does morality. The legal system rests on the assumption of agency. Guilt and innocence assume choice. Yet if every crime is neurochemistry unfolding, if every kindness is synapses firing, then responsibility evaporates. Courts, prisons, even forgiveness, all are rituals performed on puppets who never pulled their own strings. Are you ready to live in a world where no one is to blame, not even you? History trembles under this weight. Augustine declared that sin was willful rebellion. Luther argued that humans were enslaved to sin, saved only by divine grace. Modern science sides with Luther. You are enslaved, not by sin, but by causality. Every neuron in your brain fires because of a cause before it. Every decision is a domino falling in a chain that began long before you were born. The Big Bang itself whispered your every thought into inevitability. And if your choices are not yours, then what about your desires? Did you choose to want what you want? You hunger, you lust, you crave, but you did not plant these seeds. They arose unbidden, the offspring of biology and culture. You did not choose your parents, your genes, your environment, the events that sculpted your psyche. You inherited everything you call yours. You are not the sculptor. You are the clay. Philosophy has wrestled with this despair for centuries. Spinoza denied free will altogether, declaring that humans are conscious of their desires, but ignorant of the causes. Schopenhauer sharpened it. A man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. You may act, but you cannot control the source of your actions. You are a wave mistaking itself for the ocean dot, and then comes the cruelest twist. Even your rebellion against determinism is determined. Even your refusal to believe these words is predetermined by prior causes, your upbringing, your mood, your neurochemistry in this exact moment. You are not rejecting the cage. You are fulfilling its design. So you pace inside yourself, searching for an escape. But the door was never locked. The prison is the illusion that you are the one walking. You are not free. You never were. You never will be. So tell me, if freedom was always an illusion, what exactly is left of you? You are told to live in the present, as if the present is a stable refuge, a point of certainty between past and future. But physics, philosophy, and neuroscience agree. There is no such thing as the present. The now is a ghost, a construct. Your brain invents to make sense of chaos. Einstein annihilated the notion first. Relativity teaches that simultaneity is an illusion. What is now for you is not now for someone moving at a different velocity. Two observers watching the same pair of lightning strikes will disagree on whether they happen together or apart. Both are correct. The present fractures under observation. There is no universal now, only fractured slices, each observer trapped in their own frame of time. If there is no shared present, then what is the present at all? Neuroscience sharpens the blade. Your brain does not process reality instantly. Light hits your retina. Signals travel along the optic nerve. The brain interprets them all in milliseconds. What you see, hear, and feel are echoes, delayed versions of what has already happened. The present moment you think you occupy is already the past. You are always late to your own life. Experiments reveal the strangeness further. In Benjamin Libet's work, the brain prepared to act before awareness arose. Consciousness itself seems to lag, like a faulty narrator catching up to events already underway. What you call the now is a stitched-together hallucination, assembled from fragments of perception, memory, and expectation. You are not living in the present, you are living in a reconstruction. Philosophy has whispered this truth for millennia. Augustine asked, "What is time? The past no longer exists. The future does not yet exist. And the present, if it exists, vanishes instantly. A knife edge so thin it cannot be grasped." The present is only a name we give to the vanishing point between two abysses. But even this vanishing point falters. In quantum physics, particles do not have definite positions until observed. The present state of reality is unresolved until measurement collapses it, which means the now is not even fixed. It is potential, unstable, collapsing endlessly into itself. You imagine yourself moving through a series of moments, but the series does not exist. There is only an infinite flicker, a blur. History shows how desperately humans cling to the illusion of the now. Ancient calendars carved into stone, monks tolling bells, atomic clocks counting oscillations of cesium atoms, all attempts to capture the present, to pin it down. But every measure is already obsolete. By the time you name the moment, it is gone. By the time you say, now, it has dissolved into memory. The present is ash on the tongue. And here's the most invasive thought. If the present does not exist, then neither do you. For what are you, if not the occupant of the present? If you are always behind yourself, always lagging, always reconstructing from echoes, then you are not a being. You are a delay, a hesitation, an afterimage. You are never here. You are only ever there, where you are. So linger on this. When you try to seize the moment, what exactly are you holding? You point to your flesh, your hands, your face in the mirror, and declare, "This is me." But the body you call yours is a colony, a shifting assemblage of matter and organisms that you do not control, that you barely even comprehend. The thing you cherish as self is not singular. It never was. Start with the obvious betrayal. Every cell in your body dies and is replaced. Skin flakes away, blood cells circulate and vanish. Bones renew, neurons rewire. Within a decade, nearly every atom in you has been swapped for another. What continuity exists between the child you were and the body you inhabit now? The matter is gone, replaced, recycled. The body is not yours. It is borrowed, then peeled deeper. You are not even composed solely of human cells. Trillions of bacteria swarm inside you, outnumbering your human cells. They digest your food, regulate your immune system, even influence your moods through the gut-brain axis. Your hunger, your anxiety, your comfort, these may not be you at all, but microbial negotiations. Are you the host, or are you the parasite? When more of you is bacteria than human, whose body is this? History exposes how fragile this sense of ownership is. Consider mummification, embalming, the desperate attempts of ancient civilizations to preserve the body against decay. Each ritual screamed the same fear: I am my body. But decay always won. Your flesh is food for soil, for worms, for fire. Every body that once insisted this is mine is now dust, indistinguishable from the ground that consumes it. Philosophy dismantles the claim further. Locke argued that personal identity rests in continuity of consciousness, not in flesh. The body is a vessel, interchangeable, expendable. Thought experiments like the ship of Theseus bleed into the body. If each plank is replaced, is it the same ship? If each cell of your body is replaced, is it the same you? The answer is not yes or no. It is that the question itself collapses. Neuroscience sharpens the knife. The brain builds a body map, a model of your physical self. Phantom limb syndrome reveals the horror. Amputees feel pain in limbs that no longer exist. The body is not direct reality, but representation. The you feel is an internal fiction, a neurological sketch. Your body is not yours. It is an illusion your brain sketches in the dark. Even ownership of movement collapses. Experiments with the rubber hand illusion show that with slight manipulation, the brain can adopt a fake limb as its own. You feel. Touch and rubber. You feel ownership where none exists. If your sense of body can be tricked by latex and paint, how can you trust it when it points to flesh? But here is the cruelest paradox. Even if your body were truly yours, you do not control it. Your heart beats without asking you. Your lungs draw breath without permission. Your cells divide. Your enzymes flow. Your neurons fire all in silence, all without you. The vast majority of what sustains your body happens outside of will. You live not because of you, but in spite of you. So pause and face the truth. The body you think you own is a colony, a corpse in waiting, a fiction constantly replaced, a machine that does not ask for your approval. So tell me, when your body is neither stable, nor singular, nor obedient, what part of it is truly yours? You imagine yourself as the thinker of your thoughts, the author of the voice in your head. But thoughts do not arrive by your command. They appear unbidden, like intruders slipping through a door you never opened. You do not know where they come from. You do not know what will arrive next. And yet you take ownership, whispering, "This is mine." But it never was. Neuroscience proves the betrayal. EEG studies show neural patterns forming before a thought rises into awareness. Your brain prepares your ideas before you know them. The conscious mind is not the origin, it is the last to know. You are a witness to processes already underway. Claiming authorship of words written in ink you cannot see. Philosophy saw the fracture centuries ago. Nietzsche described thoughts as the shadows of our feelings, always darker, emptier, simpler. He asked, "Do you command your thoughts, or do they command you?" Schopenhauer answered brutally, "You can do what you will, but you cannot will what you will. Desire precedes you. Thought precedes you. You are a servant masquerading as master. Psychology exposes how easily this authorship collapses. Daniel Wegner's work showed that people can be made to believe They willed an action they did not. Apply that to thought, if you can be convinced. You authored what you did not. How can you ever trust that the words in your head belong to you? Inner monologue, daydreams, obsessions. Are these not just echoes of culture, biology, and accident masquerading as self? History demonstrates the same fragility. The Stoics argued that thoughts must be disciplined, controlled, ruled. Augustine blamed sinful thoughts on the corruption of the soul. Freud reduced them to unconscious drives, repression, libido, trauma. Each system was an attempt to explain what was already obvious. The mind is not yours to command. It erupts. It mutters, it loops, regardless of your protest. And sometimes it betrays you entirely. Intrusive thoughts, the sudden urge to leap from a balcony, to scream in a quiet room, to harm someone you love, strike without warning. You do not summon them. They arrive uninvited, shocking you with their violence. And yet they are yours, because they arose in your mind. But if you did not choose them, what does yours even mean? Consider mental illness. Depression whispers lies of worthlessness. Obsessive-compulsive disorder forces rituals of absurd repetition. Schizophrenia inserts voices, commands, hallucinations. These are not aberrations. They are magnifications of what already exists in you. Thoughts outside your control, dictating your experience. Illness only makes visible what was always true. You do not choose what you think. And here lies the recursive cruelty. Even the thought I am not in control of my thoughts is itself just another thought, arising without your permission. You cannot even take ownership of the realization that you are not in control. You are caught in an infinite loop of thoughts, claiming to belong to a self that does not exist. So linger here, uneasy. The words in your mind, the desires that grip. You, the ideas you cling to, they are not your creation. They arrive, they depart, they shape you, but they are not yours. So tell me, if you are not the thinker of your thoughts, then who or what is thinking you? You trust your eyes, your ears, your skin. You believe they show you the world as it is. But your senses are not windows. They are filters, distortions, crude instruments evolved to mislead you just enough to survive. What you perceive as reality is a hallucination curated by your nervous system, a survival theater playing on the walls of your skull. Start with vision. You believe you see the world in full detail, but you do not. Your retina has a blind spot where the optic nerve exits the eye, yet you never notice. Your brain invents the missing information, filling the hole with false imagery. You are hallucinating every moment, and you mistake it for sight. Peripheral vision is even worse, blurry, colorless, unreliable. And yet, you walk through the world as if you see clearly. Consider sound. You think you hear objectively, but your ears are tuned only to a narrow band of frequencies. You cannot hear the low rumbles elephants use to communicate, nor the ultrasonic cries of bats, nor the infrasonic groans of earthquakes. You live inside a tiny sliver of possible vibrations, mistaking the fragment for the whole. Touch deceives you as well. Pressure, texture, temperature. These are not direct experiences of the world, but translations, electrical impulses, coded and recoded in the nervous system. The rubber hand illusion proves how easily your sense of touch and ownership can be fooled. A painted object stroked in time with your hidden hand convinces you that the fake limb is yours. If such a simple trick can corrupt your sense of embodiment, what does it say about every touch you've ever trusted? And taste, smell both are crude chemical sensors. Dogs live in a universe of scent you cannot imagine. Sharks can detect a drop of blood in an ocean current. Your senses, in comparison, are impoverished, blind to worlds that surround you, but worse than their limits are their lies. Optical illusions reveal the cracks, lines that appear curved but are straight, colors that shift depending on their background, motion perceived where none exists. The Muller-Lyer illusion, the Ames room, the checker shadow, they prove that your brain invents a world that does not exist, and you cannot unsee the illusion, even when you know it is false. Neuroscience sharpens the cruelty. Sensory information does not flow one way from world to brain. It flows both ways. The brain predicts what it expects to see, hear, feel, and forces perception to conform. You are not perceiving reality. You are perceiving your expectations. The real world is drowned in noise, reconstructed by bias. You hallucinate constantly, and consensus hallucination is what you call reality. History has exposed this deceit repeatedly. People once believed the sun revolved around the earth because it looked that way. Sailors believed the horizon was the end of the world because their eyes told them so. Every collapse of a worldview has begun with this revelation. Your senses lied to you. Philosophy has long warned of it. Plato's cave is not metaphor, it is diagnosis. You sit in the dark, watching shadows on the wall, mistaking them for truth. Descartes doubted every sensation, asking how he could be sure a demon was not deceiving him. Modern science has only confirmed their dread. Perception is deception, and here is the most invasive truth. You cannot step outside of your senses to check. You are trapped within them, like a prisoner whose only view of the world is through stained, warped glass. You will never know what reality truly looks like. You can only know the hallucination you carry inside. So ask yourself, if you cannot trust your own senses, what possible grounds do you have for believing in the world at all? You live as though time moves forward, steady and inevitable, flowing like a river that carries you from birth to death. But physics dismantles this illusion. Time does not flow. Time does not move. The very thing you call past, present, and future is a construction, a trick your mind clings to so you don't dissolve into madness. Einstein shattered the old certainty. Relativity shows that time is not universal. For a person moving close to the speed of light, a second stretches, minutes distort, entire years pass differently than for someone standing still. Astronauts orbiting Earth age more slowly than you. Their clocks disagree with yours. Time is not a constant. It bends, flexes, betrays. If it can change depending on perspective, what does now even mean? Philosophers called this the problem of tense. Augustine admitted he could not explain. Time. The past is gone, the future is not yet, and the present vanishes the instant you try to hold it. What, then, is time? Only memory and anticipation stitched together by consciousness. The now you cling to is a knife edge that cannot exist. Modern physics deepens the fracture. Block universe theory proposes that past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, every moment already laid out, fixed, unchanging. You are not moving through time. You are frozen within it, a statue mistaken for a traveler. What you call becoming is nothing more than your brain sliding across coordinates already written. You are not going anywhere. You are already everywhere you will ever be. Psychology twists the knife further. Experiments reveal that your brain lags behind reality. Neural processing takes hundreds of milliseconds, meaning your conscious present is already the past. You never experience the now. You only experience echoes. Every sensation, every sound, every sight is delayed. You live in a permanent hallucination of just happened. Your present is always gone before you know it. And memory? Memory is not a record, but a reconstruction. Each recall distorts, edits, overwrites. The past you believe you carry is not truth, it is invention. The before you cling to has already dissolved into fabrications, stitched by a lying brain. Even your perception of duration is fragile. Time seems to slow during accidents, speed during joy, vanish during routine. Decades of life can blur into a single moment of recollection. The seconds do not change, you do. Time is not outside of you. Time is what your nervous system fabricates. History's cultures intuited this collapse. The Mayans saw time as cyclical, endless recurrence. Buddhists called it illusion Maya. Heraclitus claimed everything flows, while Parmenides declared change is impossible. Their contradiction is your inheritance. You cannot even agree whether time moves or stands still. And here is the recursion. Even this very thought, the thought that time is not real already, belongs to the past. You cannot hold it. It is gone as you read it. Every attempt to grasp time confirms its absence. You are left clutching shadows, mistaking them for substance. So ask yourself, if the past is fabrication, the future predetermined, and the present impossible, then where exactly are you? You assume that the people around you are conscious like you are. That behind their eyes burns the same flame of awareness that flickers in yours. But you cannot know this. You cannot climb into their skulls, cannot feel their thoughts directly. All you have are surfaces, movements, words, gestures. And from those surfaces, you project, you guess, you hope. But hope is not proof. This is the problem of other minds. Philosophy has named it, but never solved it. You can observe behavior, but behavior is not consciousness. A machine can speak, a parrot can mimic, a puppet can move. Nothing guarantees awareness. For all you know, everyone else is a brilliantly functioning automaton, speaking words without inner life, faces without souls. Solipsism whispers, you may be the only mind that exists. Psychology has shown how fragile this assumption is. Studies on theory of mind reveal how easily we project consciousness where none exists. We anthropomorphize animals, objects, even clouds and storms, imagining intent where there is only mechanism. If you can mistake a doll for something with feelings, how can you trust that your recognition of another person's awareness is any more accurate? History reveals chilling examples. Whole groups were once denied consciousness, slaves, enemies, outsiders, treated as less than human, assumed to lack true inner life. The Holocaust depended on this dehumanization. Colonialism thrived on it. Again and again, people have demonstrated how thin and unreliable our recognition of other minds really is. Neuroscience makes the fracture sharper. Split-brain patients, whose hemispheres were severed to treat epilepsy, demonstrated two streams of consciousness within one skull, each unaware of the other. If one brain can house multiple cells, and what is a person? What are you? Consciousness fragments under the scalpel. What you thought was singular is multiple, contradictory, unstable. Artificial intelligence complicates it further. Machines can now generate language, paint, compose, converse mimicking the outward forms of human thought. They can say, I am conscious, but so can a parrot. Do the words mean anything, or are they just algorithms, empty echoes? How do you tell the difference? And more urgently, how do you know you are not just the same an automaton with delusions of inner life? Even in your closest relationships, you cannot penetrate the barrier. Your lover tells you they love you, but you cannot feel their love directly. Your child cries, but you cannot inhabit their pain. Every connection is guesswork, inference, fragile trust. What if they are only pretending? What if you have never been anything more than alone? And here lies the recursion. The very thought that others might not be conscious is itself another thought arising in your mind unverified, isolated, self-contained. You cannot escape yourself. You cannot know anything but yourself. You are locked inside your skull, surrounded by shadows wearing human faces. So ask yourself, if you can never prove another mind exists, then what separates you from being the last consciousness adrift in a universe of ghosts? You cling to memory as the anchor of identity. You believe you are the sum of what you remember, your childhood, your triumphs, your losses. Without memory, you think you would not be yourself. But memory is not a recording. It is a ruin, a reconstruction, a lie told to keep you coherent. What you remember is not what happened. It is what your brain insists happened. Cognitive psychology dismantles your faith. Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated how false memories can be implanted. Subjects were convinced they had been lost in a shopping mall as children, or met Bugs Bunny at Disneyland events that never occurred. And yet their memories felt vivid, detailed, unquestionable. If a memory can be manufactured wholesale, then what separates memory from imagination? Every act of recall is corruption. Neuroscience shows that when you retrieve a memory, you destabilize it, restoring it in a new form. Each recollection rewrites the past. Your earliest memory, replayed across decades, is no longer the same. It is an echo of an echo, fading, shifting, mutating into fiction. The past is not preserved, it is edited every time you touch it. And there are gaps. Infantile amnesia erases your earliest years, yet you never mourn them. Why? Because you do not notice the absence. You move through life assuming continuity, blind to the abyss of forgotten time. How much more has been lost without your awareness? How much of you has already dissolved into nothing? Consider history itself. Nations are built on selective memory, glorified myths of founding, deliberate omissions of atrocity, sanitized narratives of progress. What you call collective memory is political convenience, not truth. If entire cultures rewrite their past to suit the present, why believe your individual mind is any different? And memory is not even yours alone. Witnesses to the same event report contradictory versions. Families argue over details of shared experiences. Which version is true? None. All memory is interpretation, filtered through bias, mood, suggestion. Every remembered moment is both personal and distorted. Then there are memory disorders, amnesia, dementia, Korsakoff syndrome. Whole lives erased in fragments. Patients invent stories, confabulations to mask the absence. They do not know. They are lying. They believe their fabrications are real. Are you so different? When you tell the story of your life, how do you know you are not doing the same, filling gaps with fiction, mistaking invention for fact? Even your most intimate memories are unstable. The face of a dead parent blurs with time. The sound of their voice fades. Your brain substitutes approximations, composites, guesses. The more you try to hold on, the more it slips away. You are left not with them, but with a distorted ghost, a memory of a memory dot. And here is the deepest wound. If memory defines identity, and memory is unstable, then who are you? You are not your past, because your past has been rewritten beyond recognition. You are not your present, because your present is already gone. You are not your future, because it does not yet exist. You are a story constantly edited, told by a liar you cannot confront. So ask yourself, if every memory is unreliable, then who is the you remembering them at all? You speak of yourself as though it were solid. You say I as if that word points to something fixed, continuous, real. But neuroscience, philosophy, and psychology converge on a brutal revelation. The self does not exist. What you call you is a story, narrative thread stitched across time to give coherence to something that is not there. Begin with Buddhism, which centuries ago named it anatta, no self. The doctrine insists that what you call identity is a bundle of aggregates, sensations, perceptions, desires, consciousness, but no permanent core, just processes, ceaselessly arising and fading. The self is illusion, and clinging to it is the root of suffering. Neuroscience confirms the fracture. Split brain experiments showed two competing centers of awareness in one skull, each fabricating explanations for actions the other half initiated. Which one is the self? Both? Neither? Patients who lost parts of their brains to injury or disease report radical shifts in personality, memory, behavior. If damage to matter can alter who you are, then was you ever stable? Or were you always just a function of flesh, chemistry, accident? Consider the brain's confabulation. When one hemisphere acts without the other's awareness, the conscious mind invents a reason, any reason to explain it. You are wired not for truth, but for coherence. The self is the ultimate confabulation, a narrative construction created so you don't collapse into chaos. Philosophy sharpened the doubt. David Hume searched for the self and found nothing but perceptions, no underlying entity, only a bundle of experiences strung together. Garrett Parfit dismantled identity through thought experiments of teleportation and fission. If your body is duplicated atom for atom, and both copies continue, which one is you? Both claim your memories, your feelings, your consciousness. But both cannot be the same. Identity shatters under duplication. Psychology reveals the cracks in everyday life. Dissociative identity disorder presents multiple selves in one body, each with its own memories, traits, even physiology. Which is the true self? Amnesiac patients live without access to their past, yet function as someone. Alzheimer's erodes identity piece by piece until only fragments remain. At what point does the self cease? Even your daily life exposes the instability. You are not the same self when you wake as when you dream. You are not the same self when consumed by rage as when softened by love. You do not even recall every passing thought. Selves flicker, emerge, dissolve. But you cling to the illusion of continuity, because without it, you would unravel. And here is the recursion. Even the thought the self is an illusion arises within the illusion. Who is it that knows the self does not exist? The answer dissolves into paradox. A ghost realizing it is a ghost. A mask realizing it has no face dot. So ask yourself, if the I you cling to has never existed, then who or what is reading these words right now? You tell yourself you are free. You speak of decisions, of weighing options, of choosing your path. But freedom collapses under scrutiny. What you call choice is a chain of causes stretching back before your birth. You do not choose your desires. You do not choose your impulses. You do not choose the thoughts that surface in your mind. You are carried by them, like a puppet mistaking the strings for muscles. Neuroscience exposes the betrayal. Benjamin Libet's experiments in the 1980s revealed readiness potential's electrical activity in the brain that begins before a person reports deciding to act. Your brain decides before you do. Later studies extended the gap. Scientists could predict your decisions several seconds before you became aware of them. By the time you feel you are choosing, the decision has already been made. Conscious will is an afterthought, a commentary written after the fact. Philosophy has long anticipated this collapse. Spinoza argued that people believe they are free only because they are ignorant of the causes that compel them. Schopenhauer wrote, "Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. Your desires are not yours, they are given. You do not decide what to want. You only act according to the wants that appear." Psychology shows how easily this illusion of freedom can bend. Priming studies reveal that subtle cues, images, words, context shape your decisions without awareness. You think you freely chose the red shirt, but the advertisement you glanced at earlier tilted you. You think you freely voted, but your upbringing, your culture, your fears drove the act. Your will is a maze built by forces you cannot see. History reveals the horror of this denial. Entire populations have been manipulated into war, genocide. atrocity believing they were acting freely, when in truth they were swept by ideology, propaganda, fear. How free is a choice if it was cultivated, seeded, orchestrated, long before it surfaced in your mind? And yet, even if you reject determinism, indeterminism offers no refuge. If your choices arise from randomness, are they any more yours? If a coin flip in the neurons of your brain determines your action, is that freedom or chaos wearing your mask? The recursive cruelty is this: even your reaction to hearing that free will is an illusion is itself determined. The very thought, "I don't believe this is not chosen." The thought, "I believe this is not chosen." Belief, disbelief, resistance, acceptance, all appear in your mind, outside your control. You cannot escape the chain, because your attempt to escape is part of it. And so you are left with this: you are not free. You never were. You are a mechanism convinced of its liberty, a wind-up toy that declares it walks by. Well, so ask yourself, if you do not choose your thoughts, your desires, or your actions, then in what sense have you ever truly lived? You want answers. You ask why, and expect a foundation. Why is the sky blue? Why do you feel fear? Why does the universe exist? But every answer leads to another question. Every explanation rests on something unexplained. You do not find bedrock, you find an endless staircase descending into nothing. Science itself is built on this regression. You ask why an apple falls, and Newton gives gravity. You ask what gravity is, and Einstein gives space-time curvature. You ask what space-time is, and physics collapses into quantum foam, strings, or equations that no one can verify. Each layer dissolves into another. You never arrive. You only peel back masks, each one concealing another face, until you realize there may be no face at all. Philosophy has wrestled with this abyss. Aristotle named first causes, but never proved them. Aquinas claimed God was the unmoved mover, the final explanation, but only by halting the chain through assertion. Spinoza declared substance eternal and self-causing, but why should anything exist at all? Leibniz asked why there is something rather than nothing, and no answer has ever been found. You cannot stop the descent. You can only avert your eyes. Psychology reveals how intolerable this infinity is. Studies show that children persist in asking why until adults snap, cut off, demand silence. Why? Because the regress cannot be endured. The human brain craves closure, certainty, a final ground, but the world offers none. So myths, gods, and cosmologies are invented not because they are true, but because the mind cannot live with infinite deferral. History demonstrates the same desperation. Ancient cultures explained thunder as Zeus, fertility as Ishtar, disease as demons. Later, science displaced gods with mechanisms, but the mechanisms themselves remain unexplained. Every age shifts the terms, but the regress remains. The explanations only grow more abstract, less graspable, more alien to common sense. Even logic offers no escape. If everything requires a cause, then so must the first cause. If something does not require a cause, then why not the universe itself? You are left in a loop. If everything must be explained, then explanation itself is impossible, and the recursion is inescapable. Even asking why you seek explanation demands explanation. Why do you crave answers? Because ignorance feels unbearable. Why does ignorance feel unbearable? Because it threatens identity, survival, coherence. Why does identity matter? And the chain continues, spiraling without end, devouring itself. Here lies the fracture. Every question is a door to infinite regress. Every answer is temporary scaffolding. Truth recedes faster than you can chase it. You live in an endless hall of mirrors, mistaking reflections for a rival dot. So ask yourself, If every explanation collapses into another question, then will you ever truly know anything at all? You believe the world runs on cause and effect. One thing leads to another. Events unfold in chains, and from this chain, you construct meaning, prediction, control. But causality itself is fragile. Press against it, and it disintegrates. Start. With Hume, he warned that you never see causation, you only see sequences. You see one billiard ball strike another, and the second moves. You infer that the first caused the second. But all you truly see are impressions. One event, then another. The link is invisible, assumed, projected by your mind. Cause is not in the world, it is in your expectation. Physics dismantles the comfort further. At the quantum level, causality collapses. Radioactive decay happens without cause, no hidden trigger, no determinable reason. An atom simply decays when it does. Quantum fluctuations create particles from nothing, uncaused and unpredictable. The foundations of reality are not causal, they are probabilistic, statistical, indifferent. Even in relativity, the notion of cause fractures. Time and space are not absolute. What is cause for one observer may not be cause for another. Events can appear in different orders depending on perspective. Causality is no longer universal. It is relative, contingent. Neuroscience delivers. The same wound. Your brain stitches causality where none exists. Experiments show that the brain can reorder events in time, making you believe one caused the other. A light flashes, a button is pressed, and your mind rearranges them to preserve the illusion of order. You are not perceiving causality. You are manufacturing it. History demonstrates the destruction caused by this false faith. Cultures built rituals to cause rain, sacrifices to cause harvests, curses to cause misfortune. The human hunger for cause led to witch hunts, scapegoats, and genocide, all because people could not tolerate randomness. The pattern was demanded, even if it had to be invented, and psychology exposes your weakness. You see faces in clouds, patterns in noise, fate in coincidence. This is apophenia, the desperate imposition of causality on chaos. When something terrible happens, you demand a reason. When something miraculous happens, you demand a cause. Anything but the unbearable truth. Events may not have reasons at all. Here lies the recursion. Even the belief that causality has collapsed requires causality. You think, this idea arose because I read these words. But what if it did not? What if it appeared without cause, like a quantum fluctuation in your mind? If thoughts can arise uncaused, what then grounds even your reasoning? The world you cling to, the world of ordered chains and dependable causes, is scaffolding built on sand. Beneath it lies indifference, randomness, uncaused eruptions. So ask yourself, if cause and effect cannot be trusted, then how do you know that anything you do leads to anything at all? You cry into the night sky with your questions. You look at the stars and assume there must be an answer, a voice that responds. But the universe does not speak. It has never spoken. And in its silence, your meaning fractures. Consider the scale. The observable universe is 93 billion light-years across. Trillions of galaxies, each with billions of stars, each with the possibility of worlds like yours. And yet, across all this immensity, no signal, no contact, no message. The Fermi paradox confronts you. If life is common, where is everyone? If intelligence flourishes, why the void? Silence stretches in every direction. Timeless, absolute. History shows how desperate humans have been to fill that silence. Myths invented gods who spoke from thunder, from wind, from sacred texts. Prophets claimed to hear the divine whisper. But each revelation was human, provincial, contradictory. None emerged from the sky itself. The silence remained, broken only by voices from your own species. Philosophy sharpened the emptiness. Camus called it the absurd, the clash between your hunger for meaning and the universe's refusal to provide it. Sartre declared that existence precedes essence, leaving you naked, condemned to invent purpose in a void that offers none. Nietzsche pronounced God dead not because he hated religion, but because he saw the silence behind every prayer. Science amplifies the dread. The Drake equation calculates probabilities, but probabilities are not presence. SETI scans the heavens, but finds only noise. The Great Filter Hypothesis suggests the silence is not accidental, it is death. Civilizations destroy themselves before they can speak across the stars. Perhaps intelligence is not a triumph, but a trap. Perhaps the silence is a graveyard. Psychology shows how unbearable silence is. Deprivation studies reveal that when humans are left in soundless rooms, the mind hallucinates. Voices, noises, patterns emerge from nothing. You cannot endure absence. You invent presence. Religion, myth, destiny, these are hallucinations on a cosmic scale, filling the silence with echoes you mistake for truth. And the recursion cuts deeper. Even if a signal did come, even if the universe spoke, you could never be certain it wasn't your own projection. A voice from the stars would only ever be filtered through your fragile senses, your flawed cognition, your hunger to hear something, anything. Silence may be the truth, and all sound a lie. So you sit here, in a cosmos vast beyond comprehension, listening for an answer that will never come. So ask yourself, if the universe will not speak, then was there ever truly anyone to hear you at all? Every night you dream. You accept impossible worlds. Dead loved ones alive again, buildings collapsing and reforming, bodies transforming. While dreaming, you do not question it. Only upon waking do you dismiss it as unreal. But how do you know this waking life is any different? Philosophers have haunted this question for centuries. Descartes imagined an evil demon deceiving him, fabricating the world he saw. More ancient still, Zhuangzi dreamt he was a butterfly, then awoke uncertain. Was he a man who dreamt of being a butterfly? Or a butterfly now dreaming he was a man? You call this life real, but your criteria for reality are the same you once used inside a dream. Neuroscience deepens the uncertainty. Dreams activate the same neural circuits as waking perception, the brain regions that construct reality while you are awake construct reality while you sleep. The difference is not content, but context. In both states, your brain manufactures a world, and you believe it. The continuity of waking life is your only anchor, but even continuity can be fabricated. Lucid dreaming exposes the fragility. Within a dream, you can realize it is a dream. The sky changes color at your command. Time bends, bodies shift, entire landscapes dissolve at will. Yet while lucid, the world still feels real. You feel the warmth of the sun, the weight of the cow, ground, the breath in your lungs until you wake again and realize it was vapor. How do you know you will not wake again from this? History reveals how cultures blurred these lines. Ancient Egyptians saw dreams as windows to another world. The Maya believed dreams were visits to parallel realities. Indigenous shamans treated them as truths equal to waking life. It is only modern arrogance that dismisses them as meaningless. But why? On what authority do you declare this world real and that one false? Even physics undermines your certainty. Quantum mechanics reveals that particles exist in superpositions until observe your solid. Reality collapses into being only when measured. If perception itself determines what is real, then are you not always dreaming, always collapsing? Possibilities into illusions of certainty? And here lies the recursion. The very thought, perhaps this is a dream, is itself just another thought inside the dream. If you are dreaming, The suspicion itself was part of the dream. If you are awake, the suspicion is no less unfounded. Either way, the question corrodes the ground you stand on. You believe you know the difference between sleeping and waking. But in both states, you feel real. In both, you believe. In both, you mistake fabrication for truth. So ask yourself, if you cannot prove this life is not a dream, and what is the difference between dreaming and being alive? What you call your life is nothing but memory flickers of sensation, stitched into a story. You think of it as faithful, as a record of what has happened. But memory is not a mirror. It is a prison. You are locked inside distortions, half-truths, and fabrications, believing them to be yourself. Psychology has proven how malleable memory is. The Loftus experiment showed that simply suggesting false details causes people to remember them as real. Participants recalled broken glass at a car crash that never existed. Some swore they had been lost in a mall as children, though it never happened. The mind does not retrieve memories, it reconstructs them, alters them, rewrites them. Every time you recall, you change the memory. Each act of remembering is also an act of forgetting. Neuroscience confirms the horror. Memories are not fixed objects stored in a vault, but dynamic processes, reconsolidated each time they surface. To remember is to risk rewriting, contaminating, distorting. By now, none of your oldest memories are pure. They have been rewritten dozens, hundreds of times, until what remains may be unrecognizable from what once occurred. You live inside a story you've fabricated without realizing. History is no safer. Collective memory, what societies call history, is equally constructed, rewritten to serve power. Empires erase massacres. Nations glorify victories. Conquerors rename lands. Each retelling shifts the past until entire cultures forget what really happened. The past you trust is no less fabricated than the future you imagine. The recursion cuts deeper. Even if some memories are accurate, you cannot prove which ones. You might remember the face of a parent, a childhood home, the sound of your own laughter, but how do you know those are not altered replicas, shaped by emotion, bias, or suggestion? The continuity of your identity depends on fragile illusions. That may have never been true. Consider amnesia. A person who loses their memory is no longer recognized as themselves. They may still breathe, eat, speak, but without memory, their identity collapses. And if identity collapses when memory fails, then you are nothing more than the fragile storage of distortions. Yourself is a story you tell with a faulty pen. And the cruelty is this: you cannot step outside of memory to test it. You cannot compare your recollections to some objective reel of truth. You have only what your mind serves you, and you must accept it as real even when it is not. You are trapped. So ask yourself, if every memory you hold could be false, then who are you really, when even your own past cannot be trusted?
You tell yourself you choose. You raise a hand, you move a finger, you decide to speak or stay silent. You feel the weight of freedom in every gesture. But neuroscience whispers otherwise. The choice you cherish was never yours. In the 1980s, Benjamin Libet ran experiments that tore apart your illusion. Electrodes tracked brain activity as participants decided to flick their wrists. The startling discovery: the brain showed signs of preparing the movement nearly half a second before the participants reported the conscious decision to act. The decision came after the brain had already set it in motion. You only become aware of choices after they are made. Later studies expanded the gap. Researchers using fMRI could predict, up to 7 seconds in advance, what decision a person would make, even before the subject consciously knew. Your brain, your neurons, your chemistry decide first. Consciousness is informed later, like a press secretary inventing reasons for policies already passed. Philosophy saw this collapse long before science confirmed it. Schopenhauer wrote, "Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills." You can act according to your desires, but you cannot choose those desires. You did not choose to prefer one food over another, to fear rejection, to love whom you love. Every choice is the expression of causes you did not control. History reveals how dangerous this illusion is. Courts convict people as if they freely chose their crimes. Religions promise punishment or reward as if belief were a decision. Political systems praise or condemn citizens for choices that were nothing more than predetermined neural firings. The world is built upon a freedom that may never have existed. Psychology shows how the illusion is maintained. People cling to free will because it comforts them. Studies reveal that when subjects are told free will does not exist, they cheat. More, they help less. The lie of freedom stabilizes society. If you knew you were only a machine following impulses, the fragile structure of morality might collapse. The recursion gnaws. Even your belief in free will, or your rejection of it, was not chosen. Reading these words, feeling either resistance or acceptance was determined by your past, your biology, your context. You cannot step outside the machinery to verify otherwise. You are trapped inside causality, yet convinced you are its author. And so each action you take, each breath, each movement, each thought, was written in advance by forces you cannot see. You are not the writer of your story. You are only the reader, catching up to words already inscribed. So ask yourself, if you never truly choose, then who is it that lives your life? You say I as if it were a stable thing. You carry your name, your face, your memories, and call it a self. But what is this you, and why do you assume it exists at all? Philosophers have dismantled this illusion for centuries. David Hume wrote that when he searched within, he never found a self, only a bundle of perceptions, sensations, fleeting impressions. No core, no essence, just a stream. Buddhism reached the same conclusion millennia earlier. The Anatman doctrine, the self is an illusion, a collection of changing processes you mistake for permanence. Neuroscience confirms the absence. The brain has no central place where the self lives. Identity arises from distributed networks, each handling fragments, memory, emotion, sensation, decision. Damage one region and you change. A stroke can alter your personality, a tumor can shift your desires, a drug can erase your fear. If the self can change so radically from biology alone, was it ever real? Consider split-brain patients. When the corpus callosum is severed, the brain's hemispheres cannot communicate. Each half develops its own stream of consciousness. One hand buttons a shirt, the other unbuttons it. One hemisphere denies seeing an object the other clearly saw. Which is the true you? The answer is neither, and both. Self fractures when the wiring does. Psychology reveals the role of narrative. You maintain identity by telling yourself a story, where you were born, what you've done, who you love, what you believe. But like all stories, it is edited, selective, biased. Memory fills gaps with inventions, emotions distort events, culture supplies archetypes. The story feels real only because you repeat it often enough. History shows how identity shifts under pressure. Soldiers return from war unrecognizable to their families. Survivors of trauma emerge with personalities reshaped. Entire cultures assimilated into empires forget their former selves. Identity is not anchored. It is fluid, fragile, rewritable. The recursion is merciless. The one asking, "Who am I?" is itself part of the illusion. The question presumes an I exists, but peel away the memories, the body, the desires, the voice in your head, and what remains? Nothing stable, nothing permanent, just process, just flow. And yet you cling to this phantom self, terrified of losing it, because to lose it would mean to see what was always true. There was never anyone to lose. So ask yourself, if the self is only a story, then who is it that tells you the story at all? You live as though time flows forward, past behind you, future ahead. You imagine yourself moving along a line, each moment slipping irretrievably into history. But physics tells you this is a story you tell yourself, not the structure of reality. Einstein shattered your illusions. Relativity showed that time is not universal. It bends, stretches, dilates. Two observers moving at different speeds experience different durations. A clock orbiting Earth ticks differently than one on the ground. There is no single now for the universe, no shared present. What you call the flow of time is only perspective. The block universe theory takes this further. Past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, frozen like frames on a reel of film. The flow you feel is not time itself, but your consciousness sliding along a fixed structure. You do not move through time. You are trapped inside it, already written from birth to death. Psychology reveals the illusion on a smaller scale. Experiments show how the brain lags behind reality. It takes milliseconds for perception to process, meaning you always live slightly in the past. Your experience of now is delayed, stitched together after the fact. You never inhabit the present. You only ever catch echoes. History exposes the absurdity of linear time as well. Different cultures shape time differently. The Mayans saw cycles. The Hindus envisioned endless ages repeating. Only modern industrial society insisted on linear progression, carving the day into hours, the year into deadlines, imprisoning humanity in schedules. Time became a cage, not a truth. And the recursion is cruel. Even your memory of the past and anticipation of the future exist only in the present moment. But if the present itself is a neurological fabrication, then both past and future collapse with it. What remains, if not illusion layered upon illusion? Physics drives the knife deeper. At quantum scales, time may not exist at all. Equations of fundamental particles can be written without reference to it. The arrow of time, the march, from order to disorder, may itself emerge only from human limitations. Without you, perhaps the universe is timeless, motionless, frozen. You cling to time because it gives structure, because it promises a beginning, middle, and end. But the story of time is a lie. The clock ticks only because you wound it into your mind. So ask yourself, if past, present, and future are all illusions, then where exactly are you right now? You trust the solidity of the world. You touch the table, feel its resistance, believe in its substance. But the closer you look, the less there is to find. What feels solid is mostly void. What feels certain dissolves into probabilities. At the atomic level, matter is emptiness. The nucleus is a speck compared to the orbiting electrons. If an atom were the size of a stadium, the nucleus would be a grain of rice at the center, and the electrons mere motes at the edges. Between them, nothing. You rest your hand on solid matter, yet you are suspended on emptiness, repelled by electromagnetic forces that never touch. Solidity is an illusion of resistance, not of substance. Quantum mechanics sharpens the disintegration. Particles are not objects with definite position and momentum, but clouds of probability, existing in superposition until measured. The famous double-slit experiment shows that electrons behave as waves interfering with themselves, until observed, at which point they collapse into discrete particles. Reality does not exist in a definite state until you look, and even then, only momentarily. Consider Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You cannot know both the position and momentum of a particle with precision. The more you know one, the less you know the other. This is not a limit of instruments, but of reality itself. The foundation of matter is uncertainty, not certainty. History reveals how unsettling this truth has always been. Ancient philosophers imagined indivisible atoms to explain solidity. Newton reduced matter to masses and forces, but each step forward dissolved certainty further. The deeper humanity searched for what things are, the less substance it found. Psychology reveals how your mind rebels against this. You cannot live as though the chair beneath you is probabilities, so your perception simplifies. Your senses deceive you with solidity, continuity, stability, illusions necessary for survival. But beneath perception, nothing is fixed, nothing is solid, nothing is secure. The recursion stabs. Even the particles you imagine are not particles at all, but excitations of fields. fields that permeate empty space, oscillating with energy. Remove the particles and the fields remain. Remove the fields and perhaps only mathematics is left. At the root of everything you touch, everything you see, everything you are, there may be nothing but equations. And yet here you sit, convinced you inhabit a world of objects, when in truth you drift through patterns of emptiness, clinging to illusions of substance. So ask yourself, if the matter that makes you is uncertainty, then what are you made of, except the illusion of being? You believe words reveal the world, that by naming things you understand them. But language does not liberate thought, it imprisons it. You do not see reality directly, you see only the grid of symbols your culture has handed you. Philosophers warned of this trap. Ludwig Wittgenstein declared, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." You cannot think what you have no words for. Your perception itself is carved by vocabulary. The Hopi language treats time differently than English, shaping how its speakers experience past and future. The Piraha of the Amazon, with no words for numbers beyond 2, perceive quantity in ways alien to you. Language does not describe thought. It manufactures it. Psychology confirms the stranglehold. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis shows that linguistic categories shape cognition. Russian speakers with multiple words for shades of blue discriminate colors faster than English speakers. Cultures without future tense verbs plan differently, live differently. What you can conceive, even what you can notice, is filtered by the words available to you. History demonstrates how language molds reality. Regimes manipulate words to control thought. Orwell's fictional Newspeak, a vocabulary stripped of words for rebellion, was modeled on real practices of totalitarian states, where censorship and propaganda restructured not only speech but perception itself. Change the words, and you change the possible thoughts. And recursion deepens the wound. Even the thoughts you believe are private, wordless, are shaped by language. You narrate silently in your mind. You argue, reason, explain to yourself with words. The voice in your head is not the real you. It is your language speaking through you. You confuse inner speech with inner essence. Worse still, words distort reality. They create categories where none exist. You say tree, but the boundaries between trees blur, sapling to giant, living to dead, oak to pine. Language cuts smooth lines through continua, making you believe in separations that are not there. Words invent distinctions, then deceive you into believing they were discovered. The recursion consumes itself. Even this warning is language trapping you further. To point out the cage, I must use the cage. To shatter words, I must write words. The more you try to think outside language, the more entangled you become in it. And yet you cannot escape. To abandon words would be to abandon thought. You cannot see reality without the symbols. You cannot experience without the narration. So ask yourself, if every thought you have is shaped, limited, and corrupted by language, then have you ever truly had a thought of your own? You believe that one thing causes another. A spark ignites a fire. Hunger drives you to eat. A decision makes you act. The entire structure of your life rests upon cause and effect. But what if causality itself is only a mirage? Philosophy has doubted it for centuries. David Hume warned that you never perceive causation, only sequences. You see one billiard ball strike another, then watch the second roll. But do you see causality? No, you infer it. You cannot prove that the second ball moved because of the first. You only see that one followed the other. The connection is assumption, not observation. Physics disorients the notion further. In relativity, the order of events can shift depending on the observer's frame of reference. Two happenings that seem sequential to you may appear reversed to another. If causality depends on where you stand, is it universal or merely relative? Quantum mechanics pierces deeper. At microscopic scales, particles appear to influence each other across vast distances instantly, violating the limits of light-speed communication. entanglement suggests that causality may not travel through time at all but exist timelessly outside of sequence. Some interpretations even allow effects to precede causes, retrocausality, where the future influences the past. What meaning does cause hold when the arrow of time itself bends? Psychology reveals how desperate you are for this illusion. The human brain is a pattern-detecting machine. Experiments show that people infer causality even in random noise. Dots on a screen moving by chance are seen as chasing or colliding. You invent causes where none exist because without them, reality collapses into chaos. History exposes how causality has been used to enslave thought. Oracles claimed plagues were caused by sin. Kings declared droughts the result of disobedience. Scientists once insisted disease came from bad air. Each story comforted, structured, explained. But again and again, humanity discovered its causes were fantasies, and the recursion gnaws. Even the thought, "this caused that," is a sequence of neural firings in your brain. But those firings themselves demand causes: chemical, electrical, environmental. Trace them back and the chain stretches infinitely without origin, without grounding. What you call a cause is just a convenient point to stop asking questions. You cling to causality because without it, the world is unbearable. Yet beneath every assumption, the chain unravels into probabilities, paradoxes, and noise. Cause and effect may be no more real than shadows dancing on a wall. So ask yourself, if nothing truly causes anything, then what does it mean to say that you exist at all? Every explanation you trust hides a deeper question. You ask why, and an answer comes. But that answer itself demands a reason, which demands another and another. No matter where you begin, the chain stretches backward without end. Philosophers called this the problem of infinite regress. If every belief requires justification, then each justification requires another. Ad infinitum. You cannot ground knowledge because each ground crumbles into further questions. To stop asking is arbitrary, but to continue is endless. You are trapped in a corridor with no floor, only mirrors reflecting mirrors. Consider cosmology. You ask how the universe began, and science tells you of the Big Bang. But what caused it? Some propose quantum fluctuations, but then what created the quantum field? Others suggest multiverses, but what birthed them? Each answer delays the abyss, but never closes it. Whatever explanation you embrace, the question of why pierces deeper. Psychology reveals your unease with this. Studies show that even children instinctively demand ultimate causes. Who made the world? Who made life? The human mind rebels against infinity, searching for closure where none exists. Religion fills the gap with gods, philosophy with axioms, science with first principles. But each first is only a refusal to continue. History shows how these refusals shift. The Greeks named primordial chaos. Medieval theology declared a creator. Enlightenment thinkers invoked natural laws. Modern physics hides behind mathematics. Each age pretends it has reached the bottom, yet each bottom dissolves when pressed, and the recursion poisons thought. Even your belief in logic, in reason itself, requires justification. Why trust reason? Because it works. Why does it work? Because it aligns with experience. Why trust experience? Because it feels real. Why trust feelings? At some point you stop. You must stop. But the stopping point is not truth, it is exhaustion. The regress is not a flaw to solve. It is the structure of thought itself. Every claim you hold, every fact you cling to, every certainty you whisper, rests upon an infinite ladder you cannot climb. You live suspended above nothing, supported by steps that never end. So ask yourself, if every answer requires another, then will you ever truly know anything at all? You speak as though words point to truths, as though ideas carry weight, but strip them down, and meaning itself collapses. What does any word truly mean except what you agree it does? And what is agreement, except a fragile illusion shared by minds already trapped in their own cages? Philosophy has long sensed this abyss. Nietzsche declared that words are coins which have lost their embossing. They circulate, but their original connection to reality has vanished. Derrida fractured meaning further. Every word depends on other words, never grounding itself in reality. The definition of a word is only more words. Meaning is a chain without anchor, a mirror reflecting a mirror. Psychology confirms the fragility. Studies show that memories of events shift when phrased differently. A car accident described as a smash creates false recollections of broken glass, while bump does not. Words shape what you think you saw. Meaning is not discovered. It is imposed, rewritten by context. History makes the collapse undeniable. Once, planet included the sun and the moon. Once, atom meant indivisible. Once, madness meant possession by spirits. Each era believed in the truth of its meanings, and each was eventually overturned. What you call meaning today is only temporary convention, destined to be abandoned, and recursion poisons the rest. Even this sentence attempting to reveal the instability of meaning depends on language that is just as unstable. To tell you, meaning is hollow, I must use meaning. To warn you that words fail, I must trust words. The abyss swallows both of us at once. So ask yourself, if meaning itself has no foundation, then what do your thoughts mean, if they mean anything at all? Every explanation you trust hides a deeper question. You ask why, and an answer comes. But that answer itself demands a reason, which demands another and another. No matter where you begin, the chain stretches backward without end. Philosophers called this the problem of infinite regress. If every belief requires justification, then each justification requires another. Ad infinitum. You cannot ground knowledge because each ground crumbles into further questions. To stop asking is arbitrary, but to continue is endless. You are trapped in a corridor with no floor, only mirrors reflecting mirrors. Consider cosmology. You ask how the universe began, and science tells you of the Big Bang. But what caused it? Some propose quantum fluctuations, but then what created the quantum field? Others suggest multiverses, but what birthed them? Each answer delays the abyss, but never closes it. Whatever explanation you embrace, the question of why pierces deeper. Psychology reveals your unease with this. Studies show that even children instinctively demand ultimate causes. Who made the world? Who made life? The human mind rebels against infinity, searching for closure where none exists. Religion fills the gap with gods, philosophy with axioms, science with first principles. But each first is only a refusal to continue. History shows how these refusals shift. The Greeks named primordial chaos. Medieval theology declared a creator. Enlightenment thinkers invoked natural laws. Modern physics hides behind mathematics. Each age pretends it has reached the bottom, yet each bottom dissolves when pressed, and the recursion poisons thought. Even your belief in logic, in reason itself, requires justification. Why trust reason? Because it works. Why does it work? Because it aligns with experience. Why trust experience? Because it feels real. Why trust feelings? At some point you stop. You must stop. But the stopping point is not truth, it is exhaustion. The regress is not a flaw to solve. It is the structure of thought itself. Every claim you hold, every fact you cling to, every certainty you whisper, rests upon an infinite ladder you cannot climb. You live suspended above nothing, supported by steps that never end. So ask yourself, if every answer requires another, then will you ever truly know anything at all? You believe the world exists outside of you. Hard, factual, objective. Rocks are heavy whether you touch them or not. The sky is blue whether you see it or not. But the very concept of objectivity fractures under examination, leaving only perception and agreement. Philosophy cut the first cracks. Kant argued that you never know the thing in itself. What you experience is only phenomena, the world filtered through categories your mind imposes: space, time, causality. You cannot step outside perception to check if it matches reality. The objective world is always already mediated. Science deepens the collapse. Quantum mechanics shows that measurement changes what is measured. The observer effect is not metaphorical, it is law. Electrons exist as probability clouds until observed. The act of measurement collapses them into definite states. Objectivity presumes a world independent of observers, yet the most fundamental layer of physics denies this independence. Psychology makes the illusion unbearable. Experiments reveal that perception is not passive, but constructed. Color, depth, continuity, your brain invents them. The blind spot in your vision is filled with fabricated detail. Optical illusions prove how malleable sight is. If your senses deceive you constantly, how can you claim access to objectivity? History reveals objectivity's instability. What was once considered fact, that the sun orbits Earth, that disease comes from imbalance of humors, that continents are fixed, collapsed under new paradigms. Truths are never permanent. They are consensus, fragile, and temporary. Objective. Knowledge is rewritten in each age, each culture, each paradigm, and recursion sharpens the wound. Even the concept of objectivity is a human invention, a word, a belief. To claim something is objective is itself a subjective judgment, shaped by history, culture, biology. The very attempt to step outside subjectivity is itself subjective. You cling to objectivity because it promises ground, a reality beyond your mind. But that ground dissolves the moment you touch it, leaving you suspended in perception, culture, language, consensus. Nothing firm, nothing final. So ask yourself, if you can never access a world beyond perception, then has an objective reality ever truly existed? You are told a comforting story. History is progress, a march forward, an ascent from ignorance to knowledge, from barbarism to civilization, from suffering to freedom. The story reassures you that pain has meaning, that death builds toward something greater, that the trajectory of humanity bends upward. But progress is not a law. It is a myth. Begin with history. Every civilization has believed itself to be the pinnacle. Ancient Egyptians saw their pharaohs as eternal anchors of order. Romans called their empire the Eternal City. Europeans in the Enlightenment believed reason guaranteed inevitable improvement. Each collapsed. Each fell into chaos, war, ruin. Progress does not march. It circles, collapses, repeats. Science itself, the supposed engine of progress, reveals disillusion. The more we discover, the more ignorance expands. Every new frontier opens new abysses. Newton's clockwork certainty gave way to relativity, then quantum uncertainty, then chaos theory. Each advance showed the world not as simpler, but as stranger. Progress in knowledge exposes only deeper unknowing. Technology pretends to liberate, but chains differently. Printing press, radio, internet, each promised freedom of thought, yet each became a tool for propaganda, distraction, control. Medical advances extend lifespan, but create new diseases of excess, new dependencies, new fragilities. Industrial growth lifts billions, but destabilizes climate, poisons oceans, drives extinction. Progress gives and takes in the same breath, as if it were not ascent at all but mutation without direction. Psychology reveals the cost. Are people happier now than centuries ago? Studies show modern societies struggle with record levels of anxiety, depression, alienation. Ancient tragedies echo with themes we still cannot resolve. Love lost, power abused, mortality endured. If millennia of progress cannot even free the human mind from despair, then what is advancing? Even morality resists the myth. Wars, genocides, enslavements recur under new banners. The 20th century, the supposed age of reason, saw mechanized slaughter beyond imagination. Never again becomes again, but differently. Progress does not abolish cruelty, it refines its methods. Look closer at the myth's structure. Progress implies direction. But evolution itself has no goal. Life adapts, mutates, proliferates blindly. Humanity is not chosen, not destined, not marching toward perfection. We are one accident among countless possibilities. To impose progress on this chaos is to tell yourself a story where none exists. Recursion twists the knife. Even your belief in progress is itself an evolutionary adaptation, a trick to keep you moving, striving, reproducing. The myth survives because it sustains survival, not because it is true. Hope functions as an anesthetic, not as evidence. Strip the myth away, and history is not ascent, but entropy. Civilizations rise, collapse, vanish. Knowledge expands, but meaning contracts. Technology grows, but alienation deepens. If there is motion, it is not forward, but outward. Fragments scattering, patterns repeating, ruins piling on ruins. So ask yourself, if progress is only a story you tell to endure chaos, then what meaning remains when the story ends? You cling to the feeling that you choose, that each decision, each movement of your hand, each word you speak arises from something you control. Without that belief, your identity dissolves. But experiment, philosophy, and physics converge on the same conclusion. Free will is not freedom, it is theater. Begin with neuroscience. Benjamin Libet's famous experiments in the 1980s revealed a horrifying lag. Electrical signals in the brain indicating movement appear hundreds of milliseconds before the subject reports deciding to act. The brain moves before the self becomes aware of choosing. Later studies confirmed this. fMRI scans can predict choices seconds before subjects consciously report making them. The conscious mind does not decide. It narrates decisions already made. You are not the author. You are the witness. Psychology sharpens the illusion. Split brain experiments, where the corpus callosum is severed, show two hemispheres acting independently, even contradicting each other. Yet each hemisphere invents explanations for actions it did not initiate. This is called confabulation, the mind creating false narratives to preserve the illusion of control. You do this constantly. When you pick a shirt, reach for a glass, speak a word, you think you decided. In truth, the decision emerged from unconscious processes, and consciousness rushed afterward to fabricate a story. Philosophy dismantled free will long before neuroscience. Spinoza argued that men believe themselves free only because they are conscious of their actions, but ignorant of the causes. Schopenhauer declared, "Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. You cannot choose your desires, your inclinations, your biology, your history. You are a chain of causes stretching backward infinitely. Genes, upbringing, culture, chance. Freedom collapses under causality. Physics annihilates the last refuge. If the universe is deterministic, every atom follows laws of motion, leaving no room for freedom. Your choice is pre-written since the Big Bang. If the universe is indeterministic, ruled by quantum randomness, then choices are not free but random. Dice, thrown by probability, not willed by you. Determinism and indeterminism alike leave no space for true agency. You might retreat to compatibilism, redefining free will as the ability to act in accordance with your desires. But what forms those desires? What planted them in you? If you act only as your brain, biology, and history compel you, then this freedom is nothing more than obedience to a prison you cannot see, and recursion deepens the collapse. Even your belief in free will is not chosen. You did not weigh evidence freely and decide. Your experiences, your predispositions, the timing of when you encountered certain arguments, all predetermined your stance. If you believe, it is because you were compelled to. If you disbelieve, the same. Even this moment, reading, reacting, agreeing, resisting, is not freely chosen. The consequences are unbearable. Morality itself crumbles. How can you blame someone for crimes if they could not have acted otherwise? How can you praise someone for virtue if their actions were inevitable? The justice system rests on the assumption of freedom, yet every criminal, every saint, every tyrant, Every victim acted as they were compelled to act. Praise and blame dissolve into necessity, yet you resist this fiercely, because the denial of free will annihilates the core of identity. If you are not choosing, then what are you? A mechanism, a puppet, a simulation. You cling to the illusion, because its absence reveals only machinery, empty of self. Look inward. Recall your last decision. What to eat, what to say, whether to continue reading this text. Did you choose freely? Or did the decision arrive, unbidden, from processes you cannot see, rooted in a chain of causes beyond your control? Trace it back. Your hunger shaped by metabolism, shaped by genes, shaped by ancestors, shaped by evolution. Every thread ends before you. So ask yourself, if you cannot will what you will, then who exactly is living your life? You tell yourself a story. I am me. You believe there is a core, a stable self that persists from birth to death, a thread running through the shifting scenes of your life. Without that thread, memory fragments, meaning dissolves, continuity vanishes. But psychology, philosophy, and biology agree. Identity is not a foundation. It is a fabrication. Begin with memory. Experiments reveal its instability. Loftus showed how easily false memories can be implanted. Witnesses recall crimes that never occurred. Children remember abuses that never happened. Entire groups form collective recollections of events that never existed. Your memory, the very fabric of self, is not a recording, but a reconstruction, rewritten each time you recall it. You are a story you keep editing, a novel rewritten until the original is lost. Neuroscience exposes fragmentation. The brain is not a single unit, but a swarm of modules, competing, negotiating, contradicting. Split brain studies showed two independent centers of consciousness can inhabit one skull, each with its own perceptions, desires, explanations, which is you. If half your brain can act without the other, then the self is not singular but fractured. Philosophy erodes the illusion further. David Hume could not find a self within his introspection, only a bundle of perceptions, flowing, shifting, never fixed. The Buddha declared the self a delusion, anatta, an illusion of continuity produced by attachment. Identity is not essence but process, not core but flux. Biology makes identity grotesque. 90% of the cells in your body are not human, they are bacteria, symbionts, intruders. Your DNA mutates constantly. Your body replaces most of its atoms within years. The you of 10 years ago is physically gone, replaced molecule by molecule. If matter and memory change, what remains? The illusion of I. Even psychology betrays you. You play different selves depending on context: parent, child, lover, worker, stranger. Studies show personality traits shift with environment, with role, with mood. What you call your identity is not singular but a mask collection switching seamlessly, none more authentic than the others, and recursion poisons the center. The you, who reflects on identity, is itself another story, another mask, another fabrication layered upon fabrications. The observer self you imagine, the narrator behind the masks, is itself a mask, a linguistic trick of thought. You believe there is a watcher, but no watcher exists, only watching. What does this mean for continuity? The child you were is gone, the elder you will be is not yet born, and the present you dissolves moment by moment. There is no permanent self connecting them, only memory stitching fragments into narrative. Identity is not the core of existence, it is the lie that hides impermanence. You resist this collapse, because if the self is a fabrication, then who suffers? Who chooses? Who loves? Who dies? But the truth remains. The you protect, the you defend, the you mourn, is an echo without origin, a mask without a face beneath it. So ask yourself, if the self is only a story, then who exactly is asking this question right now? You feel certain that your consciousness is real. You sense, think, reflect, and observe. You experience the world directly. Yet consciousness itself is a paradox, a phenomenon that science cannot fully explain, a chasm at the heart of your mind. Philosophers have long grappled with it. Thomas Nagel asked, "What is it like to be you?" No matter how much we describe neurons, synapses, and brain chemistry, the subjective experience, the qualia, escapes objective explanation. The redness of red, the pain of a headache, the ache of loneliness, these are inaccessible to anyone but you. Yet even this you may be an illusion. Neuroscience complicates the picture. Your brain creates the sense of a unified consciousness from countless independent processes. Attention, memory, perception, decision-making, emotion, all operate in parallel. The sense of I emerges not as a center, but as a stitched narrative, a theater in which you are both actor and audience. There is no homunculus. There is only process pretending to be self. Psychology exposes fragility. Dissociative identity disorder, depersonalization, split brain patients, these show consciousness can fragment, shift, and multiply. One person may harbor many streams of awareness, each claiming authority, each believing it is the real self. Your consciousness is not singular, not stable, not secure. It can fracture, dissolve, or vanish entirely. History mirrors this disintegration. Across cultures, consciousness has been understood as fluid. Shamans enter trance states and become spirits. Mystics dissolve into universal mind. Ancient philosophers debated whether the soul was a stable essence or a passing wind. Modern science suggests it may indeed be a process without anchor, a dynamic pattern flickering briefly into existence. Quantum mechanics adds horror. The observer effect implies that consciousness may play a role in shaping reality itself, collapsing probabilities into certainty. Yet if consciousness is itself, emergent and unstable, then the world you perceive may be built upon the flimsiest scaffolding. Your awareness is both creator and illusion, fragile, contingent, recursive. Recursion cuts deeper. The very act of examining consciousness is consciousness examining itself. You are both the mapmaker and the territory, yet neither exists independently. The eye scrutinizing thought is a thought. The witness observing perception is perception. The experiencer experiencing is an experience, and yet you cling to certainty. You believe you are aware, that you exist, that your mind is coherent. But the structures supporting consciousness, neurons, networks, attention, memory, narrative, are mutable, fallible, constructed. If they falter, you falter. If they fracture, consciousness vanishes. So ask yourself, if your consciousness is only an emergent illusion, stitched from processes you cannot control, then who exactly is observing all of this? You trust your senses. You see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. You believe these faculties convey reality as it truly is. But perception is a construction, a fragile interface, a filter that constantly lies to you. Begin with vision. Your eyes translate light into electrical signals. Your brain reconstructs the image, and you believe you see the world as it is. Optical illusions reveal the deception. Lines that appear unequal are equal. Motion is perceived where none exists. Color shifts with context. Your brain fills gaps, invents detail, smooths contradictions. What you see is not reality. It is the interpretation your brain chooses to present. Psychology exposes more layers. Experiments on inattentional blindness show that you can fail to see objects directly in front of you if your attention is elsewhere. The famous invisible gorilla test demonstrates that even obvious events can pass unnoticed, entirely unrecorded by consciousness. Your perception is selective, biased, incomplete. You trust it, yet it misses, fabricates, ignores. Neuroscience deepens the collapse. The brain does not record the world like a camera, it predicts it. Sensory input is constantly interpreted against expectations. Perception is as much anticipation as it is reception. Your now is a construction, a compromise between what arrives in the senses and what the brain predicts. You live slightly in the past, always catching up to events that have already occurred. History shows cultural variations. Different. Societies interpret the same phenomena differently. Color categories differ across languages. Shapes have distinct symbolic meanings. Even the perception of time varies. What you perceive as obvious is filtered through context, experience, and language. Reality is never objective. It is encoded. Quantum mechanics renders perception even more suspect. At the smallest scales, particles behave as probabilities, not certainties. The act of observation collapses probabilities into a single outcome. Until observed, the world is indeterminate. Your perception participates in shaping reality, yet you have no conscious control over the collapse. You think you witness, but you also create. And recursion consumes itself. The very act of reading these words, interpreting these ideas, relies on the same perception you now know is unreliable. You see meaning where there may be none. Interpret intention where there may be none. Trust clarity that is only an artifact of construction. Every perception you cling to is a product of limits, assumptions, and the brain's storytelling. You cling to perception because you must. Without it, existence collapses into chaos. But the horror remains. What you believe is true, what you trust is real, may have no existence outside your mind. So ask yourself, if all perception is filtered, incomplete, and fallible, then how can you ever know what is real at all? You believe your memories are windows into the past, records of what actually happened. You trust that they shape your identity, guide your decisions, anchor your sense of continuity. But memory is not a recording. It is a reconstruction, a narrative your brain fabricates each time you recall. Psychology exposes the fragility. Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated that memories could be implanted, altered, or erased simply by suggestion. Witnesses remember events differently based on how questions are phrased. False memories of accidents, abuse, or disasters can feel as vivid as reality. The brain does not store events like a camera. It rebuilds them, filling gaps with assumptions, beliefs, and imagination. Neuroscience confirms the malleability. Each recall rewires neural pathways, changing the memory itself. What you remember today is subtly different from what you remembered yesterday, and subtly different again tomorrow. You live in the past, but the past you inhabit is a ghost of ghosts, constantly rewritten by the act of remembering. History offers countless examples. Survivors of trauma often misremember events or reconstruct them to cope. Generations recount stories of wars and migrations differently, each retelling reshaping what supposedly happened. Collective memory, far from objective, is molded by culture, ideology, and repetition. The past is not fixed, it is negotiated, fabricated, and forgotten. Even self-identity relies on this fragile construct. Your sense of continuity depends on memory. You are the sum of your experiences, or so you believe. But if memory is unreliable, then so is the self you think you preserve. You are a constantly rewritten manuscript, edited without consent, every chapter a partial fiction. The recursion is relentless. You remember reading this sentence. Your mind reconstructs the words, the emotions, the act of comprehension. Even now, your memory is being rewritten as you process these ideas. The past does not exist independently. It is continually created in the present. And yet you cling to memory because it is the only tether to identity. Without it, you are adrift, unmoored, unanchored in time. But the tether is illusion, fragile, transient, always changing. So ask yourself, if your memories are fabrications, then who is the you that remembers it all? You believe that having options grants freedom, that the ability to choose defines your autonomy. Yet choice itself is a trap, an endless abyss of possibility that paralyzes and undermines. The more you can choose, the less certain anything becomes. Begin with psychology. Barry Schwartz's research on the paradox of choice demonstrates that an abundance of options leads not to satisfaction, but to anxiety, regret, and paralysis. People confronted with too many options are less likely to act, less likely to be happy with their decisions, and more likely to obsess over paths not taken. Freedom, it seems, is experienced not as liberation, but as burden. Neuroscience adds another layer. Each choice is the result of countless unconscious computations, weighing probabilities, recalling memories, predicting outcomes. By the time you become aware of deciding, your brain has already performed the heavy lifting. You think you are free, but your choice is often a post hoc rationalization, a narrative to explain what your neural machinery has already determined. Philosophy dismantles the illusion further. Sartre insisted that humans are condemned to be free, forced to choose always in a world without intrinsic meaning. Freedom is not comfort. It is responsibility, dread, and infinite pressure. Each decision carries the weight of unknown consequences, each path unfolding into uncertainty. Choice is not liberation. It is exposure. History exposes the same torment, on a larger scale. Societies glorify freedom of choice, yet individuals are constrained by culture, law, economy, and biology. Even apparent autonomy, career, marriage, lifestyle, is bounded by invisible chains. The illusion of freedom seduces, but the cage is always present. Recursion cuts deeper. The very act of choosing to read this text, to continue or stop, is shaped by unconscious processes, past experiences, and environmental cues. The choice seems yours, but it is predetermined by factors you cannot know or control. Every decision folds back on itself, a reflection of forces beyond awareness. The horror intensifies when you realize that each choice not made, each alternative path foregone, still exists in your mind, haunting you as what could have been. You carry infinite possibilities within, none realized, all unresolved. The weight of unchosen paths presses against consciousness like a tide you cannot escape, and yet you cannot avoid choosing. Every breath, every glance, every movement is choice, even if fabricated by your brain. The illusion persists because it must. To abandon it is to abandon agency, but agency itself is always illusory. So ask yourself, if every choice is determined, or if infinite options paralyze you, then who or what is actually choosing at all? You believe that truth exists, that facts are stable, discoverable, and universal. You trust that science, history, and perception converge to reveal reality as it is. But truth is fragile, elusive, and often a mirror of human interpretation rather than reality itself. Begin with philosophy. Postmodern thinkers argued that truth is not discovered but constructed. Michel Foucault showed how power shapes what is accepted as truth, how knowledge itself enforces social control. Facts are interpreted, framed, and validated by authority, leaving no pure objective truth outside human influence. Science, the supposed pillar of certainty, is equally precarious. Paradigm shifts reveal that what was once considered unassailable can be overturned. Newtonian physics explained motion for centuries, then relativity dissolved the framework. The discovery of quantum mechanics shattered deterministic assumptions. Each truth is provisional, contingent, waiting for the next collapse. Psychology exposes the instability further. Cognitive biases distort perception, memory, and reasoning. Confirmation bias, hindsight bias, and motivated reasoning ensure that what you believe is filtered through desire, fear, and expectation. You do not apprehend truth. You apprehend what your mind will allow you to see. History provides endless examples. Entire societies believed in truths that later generations rejected. Geocentric cosmology, phlogiston, witchcraft, divine kingship. What was truth then is error now. Even the moral and ethical truths you hold may be transient, dependent on culture, consensus, and power structures. Language compounds the problem. Words, the medium of communication, cannot capture reality precisely. They categorize, simplify, distort. By the time you articulate an observation, it has already been filtered, constructed, and limited by the constraints of speech and thought. And recursion deepens the terror. Even the act of asserting that truth is fragile is itself an assertion, subject to the same distortions, limitations, and interpretations. Every claim you make, every belief you hold, is a reflection of provisional, perception, and social construction. You cling to truth because without it, existence becomes intolerable. Reality collapses into a haze of subjectivity, each mind trapped in its own unverified narrative. But the facade of certainty is brittle. Touch it lightly, and it shatters. So ask yourself, if truth is always provisional, filtered, and unstable, then what exactly do you mean when you say something is real?
You live as if time flows uniformly, as if yesterday led to today, and today leads to tomorrow. You believe in past, present, and future as discrete, linear, and inevitable. But time is neither stable nor absolute. It is a construction, fragile, recursive, and subjective. Physics destabilizes the illusion. Einstein's theory of relativity showed that time is not universal. Two observers, moving at different speeds, experience durations differently. A clock on a fast-moving spaceship ticks slower than one on Earth. Time is malleable, stretching and contracting, dependent on perspective. The past and future are not fixed for the universe. They are relative to the observer. Quantum mechanics undermines the flow further. At the quantum level, events do not always follow a strict temporal order. Entangled particles can correlate instantaneously across vast distances, as if the future and past blur into each other. Some interpretations even allow retrocausality, where future events influence past ones. Cause and effect, and with it the arrow of time, may not be fundamental. Psychology reveals time as perception. Your subjective experience of its passage varies with age, attention, emotion, and expectation. Moments of terror stretch into eternity. Moments of joy vanish in an instant. Your sense of continuity is not an objective measure, but a constructed illusion, stitched from memory and anticipation. History shows that cultures have understood time differently. Ancient civilizations measured it cyclically, with repeating seasons and rituals. Modern industrial society imposes linearity, deadlines, and schedules. The objective time you obey is a social artifact, not a natural law. Neuroscience confirms that your brain constantly edits temporal experience. Events are perceived with a delay, memories are reconstructed, anticipation manipulates perception. You are always slightly behind reality, interpreting it after the fact, yet believing you inhabit the present, and recursion deepens the collapse. Your reflection on time, the act of measuring, imagining, and fearing it, is itself embedded in the same illusion. You think you understand the passage of seconds, minutes, hours, but your cognition itself is constrained, temporal, and unreliable. You narrate time while trapped within it. You cling to time because it organizes experience, because without it, cause and effect, memory, and expectation dissolve. But time itself is a house of cards, collapsing under scrutiny, revealing only the void of simultaneity, relativity, and subjective construction. So ask yourself, if time is not a constant but a perception, then what does it mean to say that you exist in a moment at all? You believe that your life has patterns, that events follow reason, that coincidences are rare exceptions. Yet beneath every assumption, chaos reigns. The universe is not orderly. It is governed by chance, probability, and indifference. Begin with physics. At the quantum level, particles behave unpredictably. Radioactive decay, electron positions, and photon paths are inherently probabilistic. No hidden variable ensures certainty. The universe does not follow deterministic scripts. It improvises at its smallest scales. Randomness is not imperfection. Its fundamental dot statistics reveal the vast scale of this chaos. Even macroscopic systems, from weather to ecosystems, are sensitive to initial conditions. Small differences cascade into enormous divergence. The butterfly effect demonstrates that minute, imperceptible events can reshape reality entirely. What you perceive as cause and effect is often only post hoc pattern recognition imposed upon chaos. Psychology exposes your desperation to escape randomness. Humans are pattern-seeking machines. We see faces in clouds, conspiracies in coincidences, agency where none exists. We fabricate causation to survive in a universe indifferent to meaning. The very act of believing you control outcomes is an illusion. A necessary fiction to navigate probability. History confirms that randomness governs human affairs. Wars erupt unexpectedly. Dynasties collapse from trivial accidents. Epidemics spread with invisible vectors. Decisions thought decisive are often dwarfed by chance. Genius, fortune, disaster each intertwines with randomness in ways you cannot predict or control, and recursion deepens the horror. Even your reading of this text, the decision to continue, the focus of your attention, is influenced by countless random factors. The weather, the time of day, a fleeting thought, a neuron firing in your brain. Your sense of continuity, choice, and meaning is braided with randomness, yet you imagine coherence. The illusion of control binds you. You plan, decide, can strategize, yet the universe dances to probabilities you cannot perceive. You imagine stability, but beneath every moment lies contingency, fragility, and chance. So ask yourself, if randomness underlies every thought, every event, every decision you make, then who or what can claim ownership of your life at all? You have believed in continuity, identity, cause, meaning, and truth. You have clung to perception, memory, time, and choice. You have insisted on reality, on the solidity of your mind, on the coherence of existence. And now all of it dissolves. Simultaneously, like mist under a rising sun, philosophy, psychology, and science converge in one inescapable conclusion. Nothing you trusted is secure. Your memories are fabrications. Your choices are illusions. Yourself is a story stitched from fragments. Your perceptions are filtered and incomplete. Your time is relative. Your consciousness is an emergent trick. Causality is a habit of thought. Truth is provisional. Meaning is constructed. Progress is myth. Randomness governs everything. Even the act of realizing this is predetermined, contingent, and unreliable. History shows that every civilization, every era, every mind has believed it stood on firm ground. Every structure collapses, eventually kingdoms fall. Philosophies are overturned, knowledge is revised. Your understanding is just another layer of temporary scaffolding, destined to crumble. The scaffolding may seem solid while you climb, but beneath it lies void, and recursion completes the abyss. The act of reading, reflecting, doubting, or fearing this collapse is itself subject to the same illusions, the same fragilities, the same contingencies. The you who witnesses the unraveling is the same you who is unmade by it. The narrative collapses into nothing. The story consumes the storyteller. The observer dissolves into observed. Your reality, your identity, your perception, your understanding, your choices has been dismantled piece by piece. Each section you absorbed was another wedge, another fracture, another mirror revealing emptiness behind the surface of certainty. By the end, the very foundations of what you believe to be real, coherent, and yours have evaporated. There is no resolution, no solace, no return to comfort. There is only the collapse itself, the final mirror reflecting infinite absence. You cannot escape it, cannot rewrite it, cannot reconstruct it. The abyss has no floor, and you are not merely staring into it. You are part of it, inseparable from its void dot. So ask yourself one last question. If everything you trusted, everything you were, and everything you experienced is an illusion, then what exactly remains when all illusions have fallen away? This series is a deliberate descent into the collapse of everything you take for granted. Reality, self, memory, perception, time, and meaning. Across 40 sections, it exposes the fragile scaffolding that sustains your experience. Each chapter examines real philosophical paradoxes, psychological experiments, scientific discoveries, and historical truths, systematically eroding the sense of certainty you carry, from the illusions of identity and consciousness to the fragility of memory and perception, from the myth of progress to the abyss of randomness. Each idea folds recursively into the next, leaving the mind disoriented, unsettled, and inescapably aware of its own constructed nature. Reality itself becomes a question rather than an answer, and the self, the observer you trust, is revealed as a temporary narrative, endlessly rewritten by unseen forces. By the end, every foundation is stripped away. Choice, morality, truth, and time are destabilized. The mind that reads is the same mind unmade by the reading. You are left in the void between understanding and illusion, a witness to the collapse of all certainties. There is no hope offered, no comfort retained, only the raw, recursive confrontation with existence as a fragile, contingent, and paradoxical phenomenon. This series is not entertainment. It is a mirror. It does not reassure. It dismantles. To listen, to read, to absorb is to step into the abyss of timeless paradoxes, where the only certainty is uncertainty itself.